Good evening, fellow Democrats in Montgomery County. Welcome. I am Jim Michaels. I am one of the members of the Democratic Central Committee, representing District 16, and I am co-chair of our Ballot Questions Committee for 2026. With me tonight, I have my co-chair, Will Mount, who's also a member of the Democratic Central Committee. Will, I'm going to let you make some additional introductions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jim, and good evening, everyone. My name is Will Mount, and I'm a member of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee representing District 9A. And I have the privilege of serving as co-chair of this year's Ballot Questions Advisory Committee alongside Jim. Before we get started, I want to recognize and thank the members of the committee. Every one of them have put in a great deal of volunteer time over the past month researching these ballot questions, drafting our report, and preparing for tonight's hearing. They are Jim Michaels, my co-chair from District 16, Andrew Sawdry from District 15, Bill Bean from District 16, Sharon Cranford from District 39, Alex Kiles from District 20, and Noah Sissoko, also from District 20. Thank you all. I'd also like to thank Andrew Sawdry, who's assisting and running the technical side of tonight's webinar with us. It is now my pleasure to introduce the chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, who appointed this committee and asked us to hold tonight's hearing. Please welcome Chair Pamela Luckett.
Thank you, Will, and excuse me. Thank you, everybody. Good evening, and it's my pleasure to join you this evening and welcome everyone. I want to start off by thanking Jim Michaels and Will Mount, both members of the Central Committee, as you've heard, for organizing and leading this effort, and every single member of the committee for all the hard work that you've done so far. And the ballot questions come up with every election, and they're kind of their own animal, if you will. They're those things that appear at the bottom of the ballot with a lot of words and a lot of information that most people don't understand if they've not been able to research them. And sometimes people choose not to even vote on the ballot questions because they don't understand them. But we know that it's very important because the ballot questions often play a big role in shaping not only legislation, but constitutional amendments. So, in an effort to help educate people on the ballot questions that we're going to have this year, this particular webinar is being held. We hope that you find it informative and that you not only gain the information that you need, but that you can share it with your neighbors and friends and family and other folks that will be voting. And so, with that being said, thank you again for taking time to join us tonight. And I'll turn it back over to Jim Michaels. Jim?
Thank you. Thank you, Pamela. So this is an interesting process this year. We normally get started in July with the ballot questions committee. And by July, we normally have all of the ballot questions that we're going to have. This year's a little different. We lost one ballot question earlier this week. And we had a special legislative session of our General Assembly in August that added the ballot question. So our process is extended a little further into August than what normally would, and we've worked a little harder than we normally would. We have three statewide ballot questions. We were going to have a fourth question, which was going to be a county question, just in Montgomery County. But it requires 10,000 signatures of registered voters to get a question like that on the ballot. And they fell short by about 300 votes. And 10,000 is not a lot of signatures for a county of 1 million people. In fact, there still will probably be some legislative action in the near future to see if we can't improve that to make it more proportional to our population. But in any event, they did fall short. So we're down to 3 statewide questions. We are going to finish our report in about 10 days. We will submit our official report to the Democratic Central Committee, to all the members of our precinct organization, and to the elected Democratic officials in Montgomery County. After they receive that report in roughly mid-September, we will hold a meeting of the entire precinct organization. We will convene them. We will have a discussion of the questions, and we will give them an opportunity to take a position by voting, whether they would support or oppose the ballot questions. And then it will go to the Central Committee for a final decision. Again, that'll be sometime in mid-September, probably between the 10th and the 15th. So look forward to that. And then we anticipate having all of our positions on the ballot questions included on the sample ballot that we will then print in late September and mail out to registered Democratic voters. I do want to give a shout out to Senator Kagan, our own Senator Kagan from Rockville. Was a co-sponsor of legislation this year that really is going to have a significant impact on the quality of the way the ballot questions are worded on the ballot. For years, they've been worded in legalese in ways that people didn't understand them, but the new law requires that we do a better job, but we put them in plain English, and there's a public comment period. And during the public comment period this year, Senator Kagan submitted some suggestions. I submitted some suggestions. There were other comment letters. And as a result, the ballot questions did get reworded and to simplify some of the language. So they are better and more readable. And we have that legislation to thank for it. I will turn it back now to Will, who can explain the format we'll use tonight in hearing from voters.
Thank you, Jim. So let me explain overall how tonight's going to work. Again, tonight is a listening session. The purpose of this hearing is for the committee and the party officials to hear the views of registered Democrats in Montgomery County before the party adopts positions on the ballot questions. Committee members will not be debating or responding to testimony tonight. We're just merely here to listen. There are 3 statewide ballot questions before us tonight, all of them proposed amendments to the Maryland Constitution. First, question 3. This is going to be the constitutional amendment on election districts, which most people refer to as the redistricting amendment. Second, there's question 1, which is the constitutional amendment on the Arbitration Reform for State Employees Act of 2026. And third is question 2, the constitutional amendment on temporary appointments to the Commission on Judicial Disabilities. During that third segment, we will also take any comments on one judicial retention question on the Montgomery County ballot, which is the retention of Judge Daniel Friedman of the Appellate Court of Maryland. So here are the overall ground rules. We will take up one ballot question at a time, and we will finish all of the testimony on that question before moving on to the next question. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes to speak on a given ballot question. If you signed up to speak on more than one question, you will be called on separately for each one at 2 different points in the evening. So please don't try to cover everything at once. Just please wait until we reach your other question. When it is your turn, we will announce your name. At that moment, I will enable your audio and video. Once you hear your name, please check that you have not muted yourself on your own end before you begin speaking. We call your name and don't hear anything after a few seconds, we'll prompt you once more, and if we still can't hear you, we'll come back to you at the end of that question. We will begin each question with any elected officials who are present and then move through the rest of the list in the order of people registered. If you did not register in advance but would like to speak, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom, and we will try to fit you in after the registered speakers on that question as far as time allows. One last note. Some of you registered to speak on County Question A, the proposed charter amendment that would have required a unanimous county council vote to increase the operating budget. That question will not be on November's ballot, so it is moot, and we will not be taking testimony on it tonight. Thank you for everyone who has signed up. We really appreciate your interest, and we welcome your views on the 3 state questions. Written comments are also welcome. If you would prefer to submit your comments in writing, or if you do run out of time tonight, you certainly may send your written comments to us at office@mcdcc.org. Tonight's hearing is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to the public by the Central Committee. So with that, let's begin. Our first topic tonight is question 3. The constitutional amendment on election districts, otherwise known as the redistricting amendment. Briefly, this amendment would clarify what standards apply to congressional redistricting whenever one occurs. It does not require any redistricting right now. That is a decision the General Assembly will still need to make next year. The amendment was made necessary by a 2022 decision of a state court judge who applied the standards in the Maryland Constitution for state legislative districts to a congressional redistricting. So this would clarify the applicable law. We are honored to have elected officials with us tonight, and we will begin with them. Our first speaker will be Delegate David Moon from District 20. Delegate Moon, I am enabling your video and audio now. And please make sure you're unmuted on your end.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I am Delegate David Moon here to speak on question 3. This is, as you heard, the redistricting amendment. And to be clear, we are asking for a vote for question 3. As you heard here, this is not about a map or implementing any new boundaries. This is simply a clarification to the state constitution about redistricting language that is currently there. So I just want to take my 2 minutes to give you a very brief explainer that will hopefully cut through some of the misinformation you're going to hear on this. This is not a sea change. For over 150 years, the Maryland Constitution's language discussing legislative districts and redistricting has always been thought to include only state legislative districts and not Congress. That language has never governed congressional redistricting. For good or for bad in Maryland, there are no redistricting standards in law. It's always been what the federal law applies. As you heard in the introduction here, around 2022 or so, one judge in the 150-year history of this constitutional language decided to try and get creative and apply this language to say that the redistricting language for state delegates also applies to Congress. This has never been found at any time in the courts in Maryland. And a very important point, in the late 1960s in Maryland, there was a constitutional convention. They decided to put on the ballot redistricting language that would apply to both state legislature and Congress. The voters rejected this in the 1960s. They rejected it. So this concept was outright rejected at the ballot. And in the 1970s, there were 2 subsequent ballot measures that were very clear that the language in the state constitution applied only to state legislative districts. So we need this clarification now, as you know, because Maryland is trying to be equal to Texas, Florida, and every other state on congressional redistricting standards. That is all this amendment does. It makes us equal to the other states, which is to say the standards for Maryland congressional redistricting are whatever they are for the rest of the country. One standard for the whole country. If you want independent redistricting, which I do, we got to go to Congress to get that and get them to apply it to all 50 states at one time. And that is my very simple clarification. This is not a sea change. Please vote yes on question 3.
Thank you so much, Delegate Moon, for speaking with us this evening, as well as taking a little bit of time out of your evening. Our next speaker will be Linda Foley from District 15. I'm going to mute Delegate Moon, and we'll now promote Delegate Foley to speak. And Delegate Foley, you should be able to unmute now.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Delegate Linda Foley. As Will said, I'm from I represent District 15 here in Montgomery County. And I think my colleague and our very able majority leader in the House, Delegate David Moon, explained very thoroughly what question 3 does. I just want to emphasize that it's very important that we give the General Assembly this flexibility to be able to construct congressional districts in the way that we feel is proper for us here in Maryland. And as Delegate Moon mentioned, there are many states, other states, red states that have done this. And for us not to do this would disarm Maryland in terms of what we need to do to keep our districts in line with what's happening in the rest of the country. This is a way for us to fight what is happening in Washington with this administration. One way to do that is to make sure we have congressional representatives or a congressional delegation that represents our interests here in Maryland. And this amendment will allow us to do that. I do want to emphasize again that there are no maps here. All that this does is it clarifies the practice, as Delegate Moon said, that's been in place for decades in Maryland and was upended by a court decision a few years ago by a single judge. This will allow us to redistrict if we feel that it's necessary, and it will allow us to shape the districts in a way that we think represents the best interests of our state. So please vote yes on this question. It's very important that we do this year, because if we don't get it on the ballot in 2026, we will not be able to figure out what our congressional districts should be for the 2028 elections. So that's why it's imperative that we pass it this year. Please support it. It's really important. And thank you for letting me address you here tonight.
Thank you so much again, Delegate Foley, for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. Thank you for your service as well as to the service to Delegate Moon and representing our district. We are now going to open this to citizens. We had Doreen Rogers scheduled to speak. I don't see her name, however, in the chat at this point in time. And so accordingly, I am going to open this up to anyone who is interested in speaking. If you could please raise your hand if you have an interest in speaking on the redistricting question. And there should be, towards the bottom of the screen, the raise hand button if you care to speak on this issue. Jim, I see your hand is raised. I'm going to give everyone 5 more seconds. Does anyone else care to speak on
I do
the
see,
first?
I do see the name of the person who registered. I think it's a Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
A Mr. Rogers. Not the Mr. Rogers, a Mr. Rogers. It's under. Let's see if we can. Did that do it? I put them on the screen.
Actually, a note taker. Yes.
That is the registrant. And if they can hear you, you can elevate them.
Ms. Rogers, can you hear us at this time? I believe that's their AI note taker, but unfortunately, I don't see them in the room. Did anyone else wish to speak on the redistricting amendment? Understood. If not, we can certainly move to question 1, if that is the preference. Okay, well, we are going to move to question one at this time. Our second topic is regarding the constitutional amendment on the Arbitration Reform for State Employees Act of 2026. Very briefly, this question has two components. Voters are being asked to approve a constitutional amendment requiring that the appropriations needed to fund collective bargaining agreements with state employees would be included in the governor's annual budget bill. Approving the amendment would also make effective a new law that gives state employees the right to binding arbitration when negotiations between the state and its employees reach an impasse. Again, we will begin with elected officials. Our first speaker is Delegate Linda Foley from District 15, who we heard from a moment ago. And Delegate Foley, you should be able to unmute again. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you again for having me. Also, I do want to really give a big shout out to you, Will, and Jim, and the entire Budget Advisory Committee. Having been on the Central Committee, I know that this is a huge task. It's very important to the voters, the work that you're doing here, and really appreciate all the time and effort that you put into it. You're, from what I can see, doing an incredibly professional job. So we're very lucky to have you. So thank you. Now, on the question of question one, as Will stated, this question has two parts. One is that the governor would include in his budget that he presents to the General Assembly the allocation for any appropriations for to implement a collective bargaining agreement that is reached between the governor and the unions that represent our state employees. And the reason for that is just a question of fairness. If you go to the bargaining table as a union and you bargain and you reach an agreement, this is across all collective bargaining agreements in the public sector and private sector. You do expect that the party on the other side has the power to implement the agreement. So that part's very important. Let me speak for a second about the binding arbitration part of this. Public employees in Maryland do not have the right to strike. So normally, if you would reach an impasse in bargaining between the union and the employer, the union, would have the right to go on strike if they were not satisfied with the agreement that the employer had, or the contract that the employer had put on the table. In Maryland, we don't have that. And so binding arbitration is a substitution for that. And that would allow then both parties to submit their proposals to a third party arbitrator, neutral third party, who would determine whether or not collective, which agreement or which proposal should be implemented or should be accepted. This is a very common practice in a lot of states. And I'm going to wrap up here in a second, but we already have it in Maryland for some public employees at the Maryland Transit Authority, for example. They do have binding arbitration. So this would just make it available to all state employees, other than those in the university system who are under a collective bargaining agreement. Thank you. Please vote yes on question one.
Thank you so much again for Delegate Foley for your comments, as well as on both of these matters. These are incredibly important topics that we are going to be considering this fall. Our next speaker on question one is Hannah Weisberger. I don't see Hannah Weisberger in the chat. I see a Vita Weiss. I'm not sure if that is related to Hannah or not. I'm going to promote just to check to make sure. Okay, and they declined to be promoted to be a panelist. Is there anyone else at this point in time that would like to speak on question one? Again, please or raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button towards the bottom of the Zoom screen.
Eric Fowler has his hand raised.
Thank you, Chair Luckett. And Eric, I believe you are unmuted.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure if my Zoom liked that. Yeah, I just wanted to uplift some of the comments that Delegate Foley said. I think this is going to be a really important question to vote yes on. As she said, we do not recognize, rather, the right to strike in Maryland. I think it's really important that we eventually get that. But until then, having those good faith negotiations being backed up by binding arbitration is really important. That's an important step that I will be voting yes for. So highly encourage people to support this question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fowler. Is there any other attendees who are interested in speaking on question one? Thank you again for speaking on question one. We are now going to proceed to the final topic of the evening, which is question two. Now, question two involves the constitutional amendment on temporary appointments to the Commission on Judicial Disabilities. As I mentioned earlier, during this segment, we will also take any comments on the retention of Judge Daniel Friedman of the Appellate Court of Maryland, who is on the Montgomery County ballot this November for continuance in office. Briefly, this proposed constitutional amendment will create a process for appointing temporary members to the Commission on Judicial Disabilities so that the commission has enough members for a quorum and can keep functioning rather than having to wait for the General Assembly to come back into session to confirm permanent replacements. Our first scheduled speaker for question two is Joe Kirschner. I'm not sure that he is present. If he is, if he could please raise his hand. I don't see him present at this point in time. And so accordingly, he was the only scheduled speaker to speak on question two. Is there anyone else here this evening who would like to speak on question two, the Judicial Disabilities Commission amendment, or on the retention of Judge Friedman? And please raise your hand if you'd like your opinion to be heard on either of these matters. I see Robert Blacklow's hand is raised. Just give me one moment and I will have you become a panelist. Thank you, Robert. Roger, I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Blacklow, if you could unmute your microphone so we could hear you.
Yeah. Can you I don't understand the situation. Is it that current the current group of people is dysfunctional, or they don't have can you give some background on this? It's just coming out of nowhere. Thanks.
Will, do you want to do it? I can do it. It's up to you.
Jim, if you want to handle this, I think that would be fine.
Sure,
yeah.
Roger. So we've had this commission on judicial disabilities for a long time, not forever, but a lot of years. And the requirement is when you have a matter that comes before the commission dealing with a specific judge, they're required to have members. They have public members. They have members that represent the judiciary. So they have some judges, and they also have some members of the bar attorneys. So whenever they have a matter, they have to have at least one judge, one attorney, one public member. Sometimes it's not possible. People either get recused from a matter or they have vacancies. Sometimes it's not possible to meet the quorum. They don't have the ability, even with a significant number of members, they can't get the quorum of the right number of folks distributed among the categories. So they're not able to act. And so it just sits there. What happens apparently currently is there is a way for the court to ask for consent from the party who is the subject to let it go forward without the proper quorum. And so you're asking whoever the subject of the investigation is, or the subject of the disciplinary action, to give permission to go without a quorum. And that's not a very effective way to move forward. They can have a permanent member come in as soon as they have a legislative session come back and be able to confirm that permanent member. This would give the commission chair and the governor a way to have a temporary member step in, somebody who's previously served, or somebody whose term has expired and needs to be extended. They can get a temporary member on the commission to go forward with the proceeding and the action, and not wait for the legislature to come back and have to confirm a permanent appointee. So it's a way to let the business of this commission move forward without having to unnecessary delay, is what it is. And this is the one ballot question where the legislation that put it on the ballot, it was unanimous, both sides of the aisle. All of the Democrats, all the Republicans voted for this. So there was no disagreement or dissenting views from the legislature itself.
Thank you, Jim, again for that explanation. Mr. Blacklow, did you want to add any comments based upon that explanation?
No, but I hope when we see it on the ballot that it'll say that both the Democrats and the Republicans support this.
That I know it won't. All of the questions, the wording, the exact wording of the ballot questions is available on the State Board of Elections website. But and historically, they make no reference on the questions. It literally specifically says this is what the constitutional amendment will do. It makes no reference to the legislative action or what the pros and the votes for and against were in the General Assembly. That's never on there.
Okay, just one last comment. My Democratic Club, the Democratic Club of Leisure World, is having a big meeting on September 10th. Can we get some literature to explain not just this, but all three of the ballot issues to hand out to people? Will the Central Committee have something by then, by September 10th?
I'm not sure what we'll have. At some point, when historically what's happened is when the party takes its official positions through the precinct organization meeting and central committee meeting, which by the way may be September 10th or September 14th. When the party has taken its positions, then it will put something out saying these are our positions on the questions, and then it'll give an explanation of the questions. So I don't know. Give me a private shout out. Send me an email or text me, and I will see that you get something that's useful. I have a lot of background materials, and I have obviously the draft of our report. I will get you something you can use, Roger.
That would be great. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you again, Mr. Blacklow. I wanted to see if anyone else wanted to comment on question number 2, the judicial disabilities question, or if they wanted to question on the retention of Judge Daniel Friedman. I did see one hand raised at one point, but then I believe they lowered their hand. But certainly, if anyone is interested, I certainly want to give everyone an opportunity to speak this evening. I saw Ms. Anderson has their hand raised. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. You should be able to unmute your microphone now, and we'd love to hear your comments.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Well, my question is, what about this judge that's part of the ballot question? What about him? That wasn't really addressed.
Well,
go
go ahead.
All right. Well, in Maryland, we have some judicial nominating commissions. So when there's a vacancy on the court, all the attorneys that are interested in being considered apply to the Judicial Nominating Commission, then they're vetted, their backgrounds are gone through. And the Judicial Nominating Commission it's a body, it's got a lot of people on it who are very experienced, some judges, some lawyers. They're appointed by the governor. They go through the background and they don't make the selections. They just determine who they believe is qualified for the position. And so they submit their list of qualified names to the governor. The governor makes the appointment, but the governor has to pick somebody who's on the list of qualified names that came from the nominating commission. So that's how it works. When they're not, once they're selected, they go on to the bench, but they only go on for a certain period. They go on, and I think they have to serve at least 1 year, and then at the next election, whatever next election follows that 1 year, then their name has to go on the ballot to receive a full 10-year term. And they go on the ballot again every 10 years for retention. So this particular judge has been a judge a while. He was already up for retention election once before. He served his 10 years, and now his name comes up again for retention again. So they have to go up for retention every 10 years.
And he's been nominated by the governor?
Well, at least 11 years ago. So whoever the governor was 11 years ago, he's been serving that long.
Oh, so he doesn't have to be nominated again. Huh.
No. Once they're on the bench, it's up to the voters to retain them for another 10-year term, but the governor has no further say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Does anyone else have any comments on question 2 or on Judge Friedman? I'm going to give another 5 seconds if anyone is interested. And again, there's no pressure to speak, but certainly we are welcoming feedback. Well, very well. This brings us to the end of, before closing, Jim or Pam, is there anything else you want to add or you'd like to add at this point in time?
No, I'm good.
No, great job. And thank you again to everybody who worked on this, who's working on it, who put it together. And thank you to everyone who joined this evening. And we hope that it was helpful.
Well, thank you again, Pam. And on behalf of the Ballot Questions Advisors Committee, I want to thank everyone who took the time to speak tonight and everyone who joined us to listen. Your input does matter. This committee will now take what we've heard this evening into account as we finalize our report. Now, here's what happens next. The committee will complete its report on the ballot questions and submit it to the precinct organization of the Montgomery County Democratic Party, as well as to the Central Committee. The precinct organization will then meet in mid-September to review the report and adopt its positions, and subsequently, the Central Committee will then meet as well to adopt its own positions. When both of these bodies agree, that will become the position of the Montgomery County Democratic Party, and the party will subsequently publish those positions as part of its campaign for the November general election. Now, if you weren't able to speak tonight, or if you have additional thoughts, written comments are always welcome at office@mcdcc.org. And again, I'm going to state that again. It's office@mcdcc.org. Information about the ballot questions will also be posted on the Central Committee's website, along with a recording of tonight's hearing. I want to say thank you again to Chair Luckett, to my co-chair, Jim Michaels, and to all of the members of the committee who worked on these very important issues. Good night, everyone, and thank you so much for being a part of this process. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.